So today we're going to be talking about Chardonnay, which is the most popular type of white wine that is produced and sold basically anywhere in the world. It's originally from Burgundy, France. So once again, this goes back to kind of the French regions and how they named their wines. And it is actually forbidden to be grown in Bordeaux, which is quite interesting because once again, if people start telling you they're drinking white wine from Burgundy, then you know this is most likely what they will be drinking. In the 1980s, Chardonnay just became huge in the United States. It was consumed greatly by people. Some people believe actually that the boom in soap operas kind of contributed to Chardonnay sales because that's a lot of characters on these soap operas. They were always drinking Chardonnay and ordering Chardonnay. So it kind of became a big deal in the social circles to be drinking Chardonnay. So as a result, it was planted all over California. That's where it does best in the United States, and it is still the most planted grape in Napa. All right, so interesting thing about Chardonnay is actually a lot of people when you say the word Chardonnay, they're like, oh, that's oaky and buttery and smoky and yeah, a lot of Chardonnays are, and they have those characteristics, but actually the grape itself, it doesn't taste like oak at all. It is not at all. All of those characteristics are actually picked up from the aging process in barrels that have been, as you would now assume, most likely, that have been charred and where that flavor is actually coming from. So the natural flavors of Chardonnay, it actually is very citrusy, very fresh. It has a lot of tropical fruit. It actually has a little bit of a sweetness to it. So if somebody says to me, oh, I hate Chardonnays because I hate the oakiness and I hate all that stuff, I would actually tell them, well, there's quite a few Chardonnays that don't taste like that. And it's just looking for the ones that are aged in stainless steel versus the barrels, which actually that's where the flavor comes from that a lot of people dislike. Okay, so physical characteristics of Chardonnays, and this is why winemakers love it. Winemakers love Chardonnay because it grows so much. It's a high yielding grape. It's basically a cash cow, meaning the grapes are big. You get a lot of juice out of a grape. It produces a lot of grapes on vines. It grows really, really well. A lot of times, if you've ever seen, and you watch the movie Bottle Shock, but if you've ever seen any wineries that are covered, they have the vines are covering the buildings and they're growing all over the place. A lot of times, those are actually Chardonnays because Chardonnay grows really, really, really fast. So that's also why a lot of winemakers, they do have to stress it and prune it. Remember, this is when they take the vines and they actually rip off the leaves to stop it from growing so much because that's what it wants to do. And they actually have to tie it to and kind of coil it around the coils that are running in the wineries to kind of make sure that it doesn't grow too much and it does concentrate on the actual grape production. All right, so we have the physical characteristics. You can grow this wine kind of a lot of different places. It definitely does well. It has an early ripening. It has an early harvest. This is something that is pretty good for the winemaker because it is also harvested before autumn and before crush in many regions, which is where we harvest grapes. And once again, that's good because that means they can sell the Chardonnays much faster than other varietals. So they actually it's great for winemakers. All right, so where does it go? Where does it grow around the world? So as we mentioned before, Burgundy is considered the home of Chardonnay. And like I said, most of the time, what you're going to hear people saying that not that they're drinking Burgundy, that usually refers to red wine when they say that, but you might have heard some of these different varietals or different names being talked about, especially if you're in restaurants. So Chardonnay is mainly grown in 3 different regions of Burgundy. So it's called Chablis, Côte de Beaune, and Mâconnais. Okay, and those are, and I apologize if my French pronunciation is not correct, but those 3 regions, they have a different types of soil, and we actually get different flavor profiles from each of the three. Chablis is very, very popular in the United States. So there you will have a lot of people that will tell you, oh, I only drink Chablis. Okay, well, we know you're drinking Chardonnay. So there you are for the regions and where it goes in France. We also mentioned in our last lesson that Chardonnay is one of the three legal, okay, grapes that is used in the production of champagne, and we know that champagne is only produced in the Champagne region of France. So we know that that is also only one of the three legal grapes that can be grown in the Champagne region of France. And here are maps, and you can look at your PDF for this, and it literally tells you, it kind of highlights the regions of where wine is grown in France, and you can kind of see up here is Champagne, and it kind of gives you an idea about the different parts and wine growing regions. In the United States, where does it grow? California. Okay, this is it does so well there, and California is basically everybody grows Chardonnay. Okay, that's basically what it does there. The typical California style of Chardonnay is the oaky, vanilla, buttery. That's when somebody is getting a Chardonnay from California, that's what they're getting. A lot of the Chardonnays that are coming from France actually have more of those natural flavors. They don't put all of their white wine in oak barrels, so you will get different flavor profiles. So absolutely, you can definitely get Chardonnays that don't have that thick mouth feel. It almost, a lot of times when you are drinking Chardonnay, you get this coating. It's almost like drinking milk, if that makes sense. So it's kind of interesting. So once again, this is when I was talking about the barrels. This is obviously how it's aged, and then some, like I said, some are done in stainless steel, and if that's where they're going to stick to those natural flavors. Okay, so we have different styles of Chardonnay that come out from warmer regions and from colder regions. When we have the warm weather styles, this is where that tropical fruit comes forward. So you get a lot of peaches, and you get a lot of almost like passion fruit. So that's where that's coming from, kind of sweeter fruit. So once again, if you don't put this in oak, those are the flavors that are going to come out. And because when we put them in oak, that's where they actually go, and they go through what we call malolactic fermentation. And that's the process, and we won't get too technical, but that's the process that actually introduces that buttery, creamy vanilla-ness. And that's what comes from the oak. And that's where that mouthfeel also develops, where I mentioned before, it almost feels when you're drinking it as if you are actually drinking milk. So that's it for Chardonnay.